Hello folks, here is a very short demonstration of some of the features in the app. We have until now only given you some pictures, but here we'll give a short video demonstration of the features of our app. We have in the overview, there's an iPad, you can have it on your iPhone and also Android later. Here we have the overview and we have the last measured value, 7.48 in this case. And here we have the time when that measure was taken. And here we have the time for the next planned scheduled measure. Here you can do an extra measurement besides the scheduled measure. Here you have the graph, and the graph you will see of course the history back. Ignore the results here because that is some experiments for me. In the graph you have red dots, which means that you are below low reference value, and blue dots, which means that you are above the high reference value. The colored dots is equal to an action from the machine if you have the machine in action mode. Here you have the list, and you can see all the values in a history form here. And you can also press that button and get the list even more back in time. You can export these data to the cloud also. The settings, we have the ordinary settings here, and it's very easy to toggle the buttons here. And you set the aquarium volume plus minus, you set the measure interval between 1 and 12 hours. It's a time distance between two measurements. Here you have the reference, the low reference value and the high reference value, and the machine will do actions when it is outside these values. If it's below that, it will dose carbonate. If it's above that, it will shut out the socket. Here you have the action mode. You can enable or disable that. If you have it enabled, the machine will dose and do actions if it's outside these values. If you have it disable, the machine will not do any actions. It's good to have that option if you want that. And washout mode is a safety mode, which if you have a very odd measure, maybe a seldom error from the machine, that will be washed out, detected and washed out. Sometimes you know that you will have very odd values, for example after a water change or a newly set up tank. Then you can disable the washout mode, but the default should be enable of the washout mode. You have the Wi-Fi settings, and here you have the socket settings for the socket which Alkatronic controls, and here you have some information on firmware, etc. If you go back to the main page, we again see a little green dot. It means that Alkatronic has contact to the app has contact to the machine, to the Alkatronic. We have of course calibrate functions, and we calibrate each pump, and we also calibrate of course the pH electrode, and we can also calibrate the BNC, which is the output signal to a third-part aquarium controller. We can prime the hose, of course. It's especially interesting in the beginning of a setup of the machine. You will start and stop all the pumps, so the hoses will be free of air. We can, of course, this is a very good function, test pump accuracy. If you are in any doubt if the pump doing the correct things, or you wonder if you have to recalibrate the pumps after several weeks, then you can test that by testing these pumps each separately and see the calibration data and evaluate if you really have to recalibrate or not. It's a good thing to test. So then we have the last implemented things. That's very good. Test pH electrode calibration. It's a very good thing. You can test the pH electrode, and then the Alkatronic will turn to a pH computer, and that is good if you want to check that the pH electrode is really calibrated correct or need to recalibrate. If I press it, the start, and now look at the Alkatronic, you will see what happens. Now it's a dynamic pH, and you see that it will measure pH on that water that the pH electrode is in. You can place now the pH electrode in, for instance, a calibration fluid, and in that way test the pH electrode. This is a good way to exclude any error with the pH electrode if you get some trouble, and it's also good to have as an indication if you need to recalibrate the pH electrode. You don't, and then you can stop it there and go back to the main menu. These were some of the nice features we have.